for this legislative series. This is an exciting moment, I think, for us. We've been working on this bill or some form of mechanism to help kind of equalize and get as many jurisdictions the same set of tools that can help stabilize the funding opportunities. And the mix between general fund and dedicated funds is definitely different across cities and park districts and counties, but giving the opportunity to get as many tools in place. And it's an interesting time, and I think we've evolved this tool quite a bit to get to this point in a session that's going to be extremely unusual. Very few new bills are being introduced, but we have the opportunity to share this bill and the support that's behind it, and hopefully talk through any ideas, questions, concerns about how you might want to use it. So with that said, I'm going to be turning things over to WRPA lobbyist Doug Levy, as well as Mary McCloskey, who gave some testimony this morning. And I believe a few others might have been on that call, and hopefully Tom Teagan is able to join us and give some of his thoughts about use for this particular mechanism as well. But we should have plenty of times for question and answer as we proceed. So with that, I turn it over to you, Doug.
Thanks, Roxanne, and good afternoon to everybody. And we hope this is something where we can lay out what we're working on. I think acknowledge that this is what we would hope would be the start of something versus the end of something, and then take questions you have. As Roxanne said, we're working. This has been a multi-year effort, but I think we're hopefully gaining some good traction this session. We came very close last session to passing a similar bill that provides a new local funding tool for all flavors of local parks agencies, be it a city-run, county-run, metropolitan park district, or parks and service area run system. So Roxanne's putting up on the screen the companion bills by Senator Vandeweghe. That bill was heard this morning, and the House bill by Representatives Emily Wicks and Carolyn Eslick, both of them hail from Snohomish County, and that bill will be heard Thursday in the House Finance Committee. The essence of this bill is it would allow a 1/10 of 1 cent sales tax that you could take to your voters for flexibly funding M&O, capital needs, upkeep, and the like. You would have a 10-year period of time for that. Or if you took this to your voters and they approved on a majority vote, you could have it for a longer period of time if it's for capital and backed by bonded debt. You would have up to 20 years in that case. And then we have provisions in the bill understanding there may be times where a county's interested and a city's interested and a district's interested. We wanted to give legislators some assurance that no individual is going to be paying this multiple times. So there's provisions in Section 2 of these companion bills to make sure that if multiple agencies act, the agency would collect the 1/10 of 1 cent within its service area. What I can share too is that we did a lot of outreach over the summer and fall, and we know of particular areas of the state where the agencies are talking amongst themselves on how they might work together on doing this across the county. Kitsap County is a prime example where Mary McCluskey, who you'll hear from, and Bremerton and the Metropolitan Park District covering Bainbridge Island and Kitsap County Parks have all talked through this and thought that it might make sense for them to work together on it. Similarly, in Snohomish County, I don't know if Tom Teagan has joined us yet, but Tom has some ideas about that within that county. So that's certainly workable within the bill. It allows that flexibility and allows those types of interlocal agreements. I guess the one other thing I would say before kicking it over to Mary is I want to acknowledge to you all, we know that this is of interest to several parts of the state. We know this isn't going to be an optimal tool for all parts of the state. You know, if you're on this call and you're in King County, the sales tax is a little top heavy in King County right now. But what I note is that if we get this tool on the books, we can always come back later and try and augment it and refine it. And then as we get a tool on the books and time goes by and the economy gets better, and the sales taxes maybe stayed at a static level, it will enable parks agencies some time to look at this and see if the timing is right. As an analogy, I'd share with you that the legislature back in 2007 authorized something called a transportation benefit district. And the main tool in that was a vehicle license fee. And for the first few years, there were all of about 3 to 5 agencies that used it. But over time, more and more took advantage of the tool to the point where we're now over 100 cities and counties or combined city counties using the transportation benefit district. So this is designed to get a tool started, build it over time, hopefully augment it over time. And with that, maybe I'll segue it on over to Mary, and I'm going to be on the line and can help with answers to questions you may have.
Well, thanks, Doug. Hello, everyone. I'm Mary McCluskey, City of Paulsville Parks and Recreation. And last summer, Doug reached out to all the departments in Kitsap County because one of the main sponsors was, I can't quite remember if it was someone from 23rd or maybe the 26th, but Kitsap County, Bremerton, Paulsville, and Bay Bridge Island Park District had about 3 or 4 meetings where we talked about how it might work within the county, you know, how we would make sure that no one is double taxed, so to speak. So we would have to split it, obviously, by the lines. But one of the reasons why Paulsville is really interested in it are 2 reasons. One is tourism. We certainly have been a city that relies on our tourism, certainly not in 2020, but we hope it will come back this year. And the second reason is that we're working on a facility, a project called the PERC, the Paulsville Event and Recreation Center. This is in partnership with the Kitsap Public Facilities District. We're in the feasibility stage right now. We have our first stakeholder meeting at the end of the month next week. But the only way this project will get off the ground, it certainly won't get off the ground with the general fund, is to have some kind of outside revenue stream. So we want to have different options in our toolbox. And so when we present this to the community, they're the ones that will make probably the final decision. We certainly have talked about a metropolitan park district because we feel like the PERC, the event center, will be much bigger than just Paulsville, which is 11,850 people. Greater Paulsville, which goes into unincorporated Kitsap County, is about 20,000 people. So we kind of feel like it should be a larger area, but we also feel like that the visitors, the tourism will help be able to. We'll use this as well, so they'll be able to help pay for it. So that's one of the reasons why we're really interested in it. We're also interested because we want the community to have the final say on this project. And by saying yay or nay to a park's 0.1% is their way of saying yay or nay. And then finally, the last thing is that we're certainly behind in our maintenance. We've lost 1 maintenance tech position through 2020, won't be back till at least 23. And so this money could also help there. So we, again, just want to have another tool in the toolbox so we can present it all to the community. And I think that's all.
Does anybody have any questions on the bill itself or need help with support information? You can ask or throw it up there in the chat for us to respond to. Quiet group. Hey, Doug, you want to talk about the process that's coming up? You did kind of introduce the fact that there was testimony this morning and on Thursday, but how it's going to look moving forward since it has been initiated in both the House and Senate, and then maybe where we got stuck last year and how we see some of the strategizing helping us get past that this year.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. This is Doug again. So last year we had a House Bill, House Bill 2625, that passed out of the House pretty overwhelmingly. It was a 72 to 24 vote. So 3 yeses for every no. And then that bill went over to the Senate, passed more narrowly out of the Senate Ways and Means Committee. And then it was just a hop, skip, and a jump away from being law. It just needed to get pulled, what's called pulled out of the Senate Rules Committee onto the Senate floor calendar and voted upon. And we knew from our work with Senator Leas, the majority leader, that the votes on the floor were there to pass it. However, and this gets to Roxanne's point about strategy, at the end of the day, partly because of some other bills that were happening, partly because of some grumpiness on saying yes to local taxing options, the Senate Republicans didn't pull that bill to the floor calendar. And you might say, well, why couldn't Senate Democrats pull it? And what I can tell you is there's a tradition in Olympia. There are always exceptions to the rule, but for the most part, there's an expectation that the Republican caucus will pull Republican bills and the Democratic caucus will pull Democratic bills. And so for whatever reason, the Republicans didn't go there, not for our lack of trying. And so for 2021, we want to avoid that, frankly. So we have a Democratic sponsor in the Senate, Senator Vandeweghe, who's on the Ways and Means Committee, and both the Democratic and Republican sponsor in the House, but the prime sponsor is Representative Emily Wicks, a Democrat from Everett. We want to have some buffer against that. The minority party isn't going to pull the other minority caucus members' bill. The Democrats have a majority in both caucuses. This would be the majority caucus pulling majority member bills. To Roxanne's other part of her question, in the House, even though the hearing is later this week on House Bill 1025, one of the nice things is by virtue of the referral, the bill has already bypassed the policy committee. So it's gone straight to the fiscal committee in charge of things like tax policy. And we feel good about the bill in the House Finance Committee because it got out of that committee on an 8-2 vote last session. So I've had a very positive conversation with the committee chair and the committee vice chair. You can never make 1,000% guarantees on things legislated, but we feel good that our panel of testifiers is going to put us in a good place to move the bill out of the Finance Committee. So that would mean it would go to the House Rules Committee. In the Senate, we're going to have another stop. The Senate Housing and Local Government Committee, I think, is very likely to pass Senate Bill 5006, but then it still has to make a stop at the Fiscal Committee, which is Ways and Means. Then it can go to Rules. We're a little unusual in the 2021 session because in this virtual session, the members are really discouraging having too many companion bills, i.e. bills that are in both the House and the Senate. In this case, we got a little slack because the House sponsor is a freshman member, Representative Wicks, and she really wanted to have the bill, and they said okay. And so we happen to have companions. We're not the only case of companion bills, but there aren't a ton. So So that's good news. So that's where we're at. It's a long 105-day session. I think we'll learn more in bits and pieces, but early on, I think we have reasons to be optimistic. I think we have sponsors who want to work these bills and help them get to the finish line.
One of the things that I'll point out on this information page, and it will be available on the WRPA website, and we're happy to email it to you as well, is we updated quite a bit of the information that this session in particular, they're focused on COVID-19 recovery, equity, and economic development. And we know that this bill and our work in general is really key to recovery and getting equity across our system. So that, I think, is part of the reason that it's been able to get the attention it's got already. If you need some information, because as we said, this is something that would give the authority, but you probably still have work to do working through your own organization to position taking advantage of it, either individually or in partnership with other organizations that would figure out the kind of the cost share, that whole avoiding double taxation and coming up with an agreement is a key piece of this. So are there any questions so far? And I'll go ahead and bring up the legislation itself. All right, you all. We're definitely a quiet group. Okay. The one thing is we referenced in that other document, if you're not aware, we did a survey in conjunction with the Association of Washington Cities and the Washington Association of Counties. And that summary data is also on the WRPA site. And in addition to the summary, there's a link to the raw data itself that has a lot of COVID impacts, and you have the opportunity then to put your data in if you want to see how you're comparing in terms of need, if that helps you make your individual case. So Doug and Mary, I'll take this up to the beginning, and then if there's anything that you want to talk through or particular sections of this or questions that people have, I can just direct me and I can pause there.
So this is Doug. What we did in the beginning of the bill, not all bills, but a lot of bills will have a section 1, what's called an intent section. And we did that with this bill, and we refreshed it for an important reason, part of which Roxanne just covered. But we talk about the additional population growth and the growth of demand for the use of park spaces and fields and the like. But we also talked about the fact that all of our parks and recreation agencies are dealing with this growth at the same time they deal with budget cuts under COVID. At the same time, their areas like trails are being tremendously stressed by additional users as a result of COVID. So we factored that into the intent section, which I think gives the legislature kind of an updated state of play of what our sector is up against and why we think this tool is an important one. And then section 2, Roxanne, if you want to scroll, does a couple things, but it opens up the authority for any type of governing body of a parks agency to take the 1/10 to its voters. And then in this section 2.2 A through D, it walks you through the, hey, what happens if both a county and a city or both a county and a metropolitan park district want to do this. It walks you through how all of that is going to occur. And then there's a catch-all requirement for entering into an interlocal agreement if you've got multiple agencies and not just two. Then it gets into sub 3, says this is how you may use the dollars. We tried to keep that very flexible for you all. Covers the gamut of acquiring, constructing, improving, providing, funding, maintenance, and improvement. So frankly, our effort there is to keep it as broad-based as possible so that you all have a lot of options on what you can do in taking it to your voters. Then we get into the thing I mentioned, that it's a 10-year period of time unless you have bonds mixed in with it, in which case it can go up to 20 years. So that's in the sections 4 and 5. Section 2 sub 6 allows you to take some of that money for admin overhead. You can do up to 3%. Let's see. Sub 7 is the 20-year limitation on bonding, and that's the whole shebang.
Thank you, Doug. You know,
And obviously, Roxanne is showing Senate Bill 5006. House Bill 1025 reads the exact same way. It's just got a different, it's got an HB instead of an SB and a bunch of different sponsors on it. Very good list of Democratic and Republican sponsors, I might add.
Definitely. What I just highlight as Pierce County has had a version of this because of a zoo and trek tax that was collected for that primary purpose, but then allowed for a share to go towards park purposes county-wide. So, you know, that item 3 being able to support maintenance, I think is a huge piece. We all struggle with maintenance and operations, and the flexibility that comes with this, and how this was written and patterned after what else was allowed, I think is a big piece of it. You know, I think agencies have to look at the advantage, though. If you do need more capital, if you have a large project and you need to bond, then of course, being able to collect and have a longer bond payoff period is, you know, an important determination between whether you can do the, which is most important to you and how you want to then structure your repayment obligation with the public.
And I might add too, for those on the call, you know, Olympia is the land of trade-offs, right? So I think in a perfect world, if we were kings and queens and, you know, said by fiat what should go in a bill, we probably would have done the bonding for longer than 20 years. Similarly, in a perfect world, we'd say this 1/10 of 1 cent is just out there and it's your authority to use for good. But I think we got a lot of bipartisan support by working with Republican members on the 10 years at a time, and by keeping the bonding to 20 years. And I, you know, vividly recall when we queried a bunch of you about that. I think, you know, most of you felt like 20 could work. You know, it's not that some of you haven't gone to longer term bonding than that, but for most of you, that was a workable thing. And again, as I shared earlier on the call, doesn't mean that this has to stay static and forevermore. We get it on the books and we find there are, you know, limiting factors that are a problem. Going back and fine tuning statutes that exist is a lot better than, you know, trying to create them in the first place.
You know, one of the questions we'd like to ask is, how many of you believe that you think you might be actively using this tool in the next 3 to 5 years if it gets passed. Anybody willing to share that information? And I think what you think your public climate and organizational or local decision-making bodies temperament might be about the bill itself.
No takers.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Yeah, you know, as Mary mentioned, it really is about tools and having as many options as possible. It is good that park districts maybe need to be able to have access to this tool because there's another bill going through, right, Vashon, and others are looking at pro rationing that could happen related to your property tax base, depending on your level as a junior taxing district. So there's sometimes where many of us feel like a park district seems like the solution, or your decision makers might feel like they just want to form a park district, which could and is potentially a really good thing, but depending on where you are in that funding source, that base of property tax might need something that's the companion of a sales back tax base that goes along with it. So sometimes those are the same funding tools that go into your general fund, but having a piece of that is dedicated to your agency may be helpful when it comes to budgeting time. I know here in the county going through COVID, the fact that we have several different streams added a little bit of protection, but I think there's still the point of having to make sure that this is a new stream or protects something new so that your general fund allocation, if you get one of those, remains the same.
And I'm seeing one comment in the chat from Carly. Carly, actually, a Parks and Recreation service area would be eligible to use this tool. And just if you don't answer on this call and you want to let us know later, that would be great. You know, we just learned within the last few days, the city of Lake Stevens is interested in this in the short term, and they happen to have the vice chair of the House Finance Committee as one of their legislators. So don't assume we know everything. We've done a lot of outreach and we have a sense of, you know, I think 8, 10, 12 agencies that are most interested. But if you're on that list and we can learn about you, great.
Yeah, Paul, and I think you raised a great point there. I think sometimes for this, a big signature project that the community's behind can often help to garner the support for the passage of something like this. And then while that might be the priority project, it also gives you access to resource that can help for the maintenance and operations, the other side of that project, and some of the administrative costs of doing the development, especially smaller organizations that don't have access to other pools or reserved for capital projects.
And I might add, I don't think Tom was able to make this, Tom Tigan from Snohomish County, but one of the things we learned in Snohomish County is that they have some agencies where their elected officials are a little more tax averse, Marysville being one of them. And their parks director said, I doubt we would pass this standalone or take this to our voters. But if it's a county-wide and we work out a distribution mechanism within the county, it's much easier. So, you know, that's something the Snohomish County agencies talked actively about amongst themselves, and something that Tom was very interested in looking at down the road. And we know this is 2021, we're trying to snap out of a pandemic. It's probably going to be difficult for too many agencies to sprint to the, to the ballot with their voters on this year. But again, over the next few years, the economy is going to get better. The pandemic, knock on wood, really will end, and there will be a time and a place. I see a question in the chat from Fred. Fred, the answer is not directly. It's something that would go to a local parks agency. However, it doesn't mean you couldn't make some interlocal agreements. I know in Senator Vandewey's district, for example, the Fort Worden folks have some interest in this, and I think might be interested in what kind of agreements they could structure with the city of Port Townsend. So it's something that could be looked at indirectly.
Can I just add to that? I think it's a really good time to start some of the partnership conversations of what might be possible, because those signature projects and the partnerships will actually kind of leverage the support that you can get publicly as well as across your organizations if a potential cost share. So knowing this tool is there and maybe even vetting the language in it might be a good place to open up the conversation.
Sorry, I've had my camera off. I've been here cooking for my daughter and eating. She's home today. You might hear in the background. In fact, sorry about that. But I just want to acknowledge you, Roxanne, and you, Doug. You guys have done an incredible amount of work. This has been 3 years in the making, actually 4 years in the making, if you count some of those early phone calls we did. And I think some of the people on this call were on some of that series of calls we did across the state. And then, we had a good run the first year. We made it a little further this year. Third time's a charm. So I think this is our year. But I just want to thank both of you. The work around the survey, the work around building the grassroots support. You guys have been working tirelessly all year, although legislative session's only a few months out of the year. You guys have been at this every month. So thank you on behalf of WRPA. Thank you so much for leading our profession on this journey.
Thank you, Paul. Special brownie points to Roxanne, because she, I think if folks didn't catch it, she mentioned that Pierce County had worked successfully on getting a sales tax tool wrapped around the zoo and aquarium in their area. So Roxanne is our lead altruism candidate here.
Okay. Right. Well, thank you all for your time today. I did bring up the WRPA page because we have been building really our legislative agenda information here, but also some of the tools. So if there's some pieces of this information or recording that you feel like you need to share with someone to garner some support, sorry, I'm scrolling past our legislative agenda, but there is a place where you can download it, and there will be weekly updates that Doug is providing about how this progresses. Some of the really key support data that's in our handout, as well as actually the language of the bill itself, came from the executive summary of our survey. So if you haven't seen that, you might want to take a peek. And again, anything you need to help make your case locally to take advantage of this, let us know, because we're trying to get it all here so that it's pretty easy for you to find in use to make that compelling case. And down here, after today, the recording from this session will end up being here, as well as a copy of that handout that we shared. So hopefully you're able to find what you need. And if any ideas, concerns, questions come up during the process, don't hesitate to reach out to myself, to Mary, or to Doug. so that we can collect those and be prepared for those as we take it through the process, as well as, answer questions that are going to help you determine whether your agency is going to be able to take advantage of this. All right. So any final questions, comments, or concerns for folks before we close off this time? It's like Doug Chase. I don't ask for money to utilize in the short term. Yes, long term. Great. Great. And thank you for that, Doug. And great point. The more you can share it with your legislative body, or if it's part of being able to support it in your own agency's legislative agenda, we would definitely appreciate that.
Thank you, Doug Chase. I know in Spokane and Spokane County, where you've got a state of Idaho right across the border, that's a big deal that you're signing in on it. So very much appreciate it.
Okay, I guess with that, we will conclude today's call. Hopefully you have registered for the Great Outdoors Day. That event is February 4th. It's one we do in conjunction with the Washington Wildlife and Recreation Coalition. When you register for that event, you will be notified of a pre-ledge day training that we will be having next Tuesday. And that's a chance to really kind of learn how this legislative process will go and how we can make best use of the scheduled one-on-one meetings with the legislators that are being put in place. So if you've heard there's information out there on the 26th, the key to getting that information and joining in on that call is registering for Ledge Day on the 4th. And then there's also 2 sessions that Doug has put together to talk with folks regarding the capital budget in both the House and Senate. So there'll be more information this week coming out about how you can log on for those sessions.